My teenage SIL got pregnant and I got blamed for it. When I exposed that her sister's husband was the father, my in-laws accused me of ruining their family. I, 28F, need to get this off my chest. I come from a traditional family where arranged marriages are common. I grew up watching my cousins and friends get married this way, and it seemed to work out fine for most of them. 6 months ago, I got married to Sam, 32M, through an arranged marriage set up by our families. Our families met through some mutual friends at a wedding. Sam's mother was apparently very impressed with how I handled some children at the wedding who were running around causing trouble. She asked about my family and found out we came from similar backgrounds. She reached out to my parents through the mutual friends, saying she was looking for a bride for her son. I met Sam only 4 times before the wedding, always with family around. He seemed nice enough, he had a good job as an engineer, was well-spoken, and came from a respectable family. My parents were thrilled because his family was slightly better off than ours, and they thought I would have a comfortable life. Sam and I never got a chance to talk privately, but I thought we would have time to get to know each other after marriage. After the wedding, I moved in with Sam and his family. It's common in our culture for the new bride to live with her husband's family. The house was huge compared to my parents' home. Sam lived with his parents, his younger sister Catherine, 18F, and his elder sister Rachel, 35F, along with her husband Martin, 38M, and their 2 kids aged 8 and 6. The first few months were okay. My mother-in-law was strict about how she wanted things done in the house, but I tried my best to adjust. I would wake up early to help with breakfast, then get ready for my job as an accountant. After work, I would help with dinner and household chores. My father-in-law barely spoke to me directly, but that was normal in our culture. Catherine and I became quite close. She was in her senior year of high school and needed someone to talk to who wasn't as judgmental as her mother. She would often come to my room in the evenings to chat about school, her friends, and normal teenage stuff. I enjoyed her company because she reminded me of my own younger sister who lives in a different city. Sometimes Catherine would talk about boys at school, especially this one boy Jake, 19M, who worked at a local garage. I never encouraged her to date him, but I didn't scold her either. I just listened and occasionally advised her to focus on her studies. I knew my in-laws had big dreams for Catherine. They wanted her to go to an expensive college and eventually marry someone wealthy like her cousin had done. Everything changed last month. I was in the kitchen helping my mother-in-law prepare dinner when Catherine came home from school crying. She looked terrified and said she needed to tell everyone something important. My mother-in-law called everyone to the living room. That's when Catherine announced she was pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father-in-law started shouting, demanding to know who was responsible. Catherine, still crying, said it was Jake and that they were in love. She wanted to marry him. That's when all hell broke loose. My mother-in-law started screaming about how Catherine had ruined their family's reputation. My father-in-law was yelling about how Jake was just a mechanic who could barely support himself. Rachel was trying to calm everyone down while Martin stood in the corner looking uncomfortable. Sam just sat there in shock. Suddenly, my mother-in-law turned to me. She pointed her finger at me and screamed that this was all my fault. She said she had seen how I let Catherine spend hours in my room, probably filling her head with modern nonsense about dating and boys. She accused me of encouraging Catherine to rebel against their values. I tried to defend myself, saying I had never encouraged Catherine to date anyone. But my mother-in-law wouldn't listen. She started bringing up innocent things and twisting them, like how I had driven Catherine to the mall a few times after school, with her permission, or how I had bought Catherine a new phone for her birthday, which they had agreed to. The next few days were horrible. My mother-in-law went to Sam and told him she had noticed disturbing things about my character. She claimed she had seen me talking to men at the grocery store and dressing inappropriately when leaving for work. All lies. I wore the same conservative clothes I had always worn, and any man I talked to was either a store employee or a colleague in a professional setting. But Sam believed them. He started coming home early from work to check what time I returned. He would question me about who I talked to at work. One evening, he even checked my phone while I was in the shower. I felt humiliated, but I kept quiet because I didn't want to make things worse. The final blow came when Catherine announced she wanted to keep the baby and marry Jake. My in-laws had been hoping she would agree to give up the baby for adoption and forget about Jake. When she refused, they somehow blamed me again, saying I must have advised her to ruin her life this way. That night, my father-in-law came to our bedroom. He told Sam that they had decided I needed to leave the house. He said I was a bad influence and they couldn't trust me around their family anymore. The worst part was Sam's reaction. He just stood there silently, looking at the floor, while his father said all these horrible things about me. When I tried to speak up, my mother-in-law burst into the room crying about how I had ruined their perfect family. They gave me 2 days to pack my things and leave. I called my parents in tears, but their response shocked me even more. They said I must have done something wrong for my in-laws to react this way, and I should apologize and try to fix things. My mother said no one kicks out their daughter-in-law without a reason. I had nowhere to go. I used most of my savings to rent a tiny apartment I could barely afford. The only things I took were my clothes and personal items. Sam didn't even help me move. He just watched as I carried my boxes out to the taxi. After I left, he didn't try to contact me even once. The only person who kept in touch was Sarah, 18F, Catherine's best friend from school. She would text me sometimes to check how I was doing and let me know that Catherine was okay. That's how things were until yesterday, when Sarah called me crying. She said she couldn't keep quiet anymore because the guilt was eating her up. She told me the baby wasn't Jake's, it was Martin's. Apparently, Martin had been taking advantage of Catherine for months, and she was too scared to tell anyone. Sarah had known about it but promised Catherine she wouldn't tell anyone. Now she felt guilty seeing me take the blame for everything. I don't know what to do. Should I tell everyone the truth? Would they even believe me without proof? I lost my marriage, my home, and my reputation because of their false accusations, and now I find out it was all because of Martin's disgusting actions. I need advice on how to handle this. Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your support helped me realize I needed to take action. After reading your comments and thinking about it for days, I decided I needed solid proof before I could tell anyone about Martin. Just my word against his wouldn't be enough, especially given how my in-laws had treated me before. I reached out to Sarah and asked if we could meet. She agreed and we met at a coffee shop far from my in-laws' neighborhood. Sarah looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. She told me more details about what she knew. Apparently, Catherine had confided in her about Martin's behavior several months ago. It started with inappropriate comments when no one was around, then escalated to touching and eventually more. Catherine was terrified of telling anyone because Martin had threatened to tell everyone she had seduced him if she spoke up. Sarah said she had wanted to tell someone, but Catherine made her promise not to. She said Catherine only made up the story about Jake being the father because she knew her family would never force her to marry him. Jake had no idea he was being used as a cover story. He and Catherine had never even dated. They were just friendly at school. I asked Sarah if she would help me get proof. At first, she was hesitant, worried about betraying Catherine's trust. But I explained that without proof, Martin would continue to get away with what he did, and Catherine would never get justice. Eventually, Sarah agreed to help. We came up with a plan. Sarah would text Catherine asking to meet at a specific cafe to talk about the baby. I would sit at a nearby table where I could record their conversation without being seen. I know recording someone without their knowledge isn't right, but I felt I had no choice. My entire life had been destroyed because of this situation. The day of the meeting, I arrived early and chose a table partially hidden by a large plant. I was so nervous my hands were shaking. When Catherine arrived, I hardly recognized her. The confident, bubbly teenager I had known was gone. She looked pale and tired, her usual stylish clothes replaced by a baggy sweater despite the warm weather. Sarah had placed her phone on the table, recording the whole conversation. At first, they talked about general things, school, the pregnancy, how Catherine was feeling. Then Sarah carefully brought up Jake. Catherine's face crumpled, and she started crying. What she revealed next made me feel sick. Through her tears, Catherine explained everything. Martin had started being inappropriate with her shortly after she turned 17. It began with comments about how grown-up she looked, then progressed to accidentally brushing against her in the hallway. One day, when everyone was out and she was homesick from school, he came to her room to check on her. That was the first time he assaulted her. Catherine said she tried to avoid being alone with him after that, but it was impossible living in the same house. He would find ways to corner her when no one was around. He told her no one would believe her if she spoke up because he was the perfect son-in-law in everyone's eyes. He said he would tell everyone she had been throwing herself at him for months. When she found out she was pregnant, she was terrified. Martin told her to get an abortion, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. That's when she came up with the story about Jake. She knew her parents would never accept Jake as a husband, so she wouldn't have to actually marry anyone. She felt awful about using Jake's name, but she was desperate. The whole time I was listening, I felt physically ill. I thought about all the times I had seen Martin and Catherine in the house, never suspecting anything was wrong. I remembered how uncomfortable Catherine sometimes seemed around him, how she would make excuses to leave the room when he entered. I had attributed it to typical teenage awkwardness. After Catherine left the cafe, I sat there for a long time, trying to process everything I had heard. Sarah was crying quietly across from me. She said she felt terrible for not speaking up sooner, but she had been trying to respect Catherine's wishes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how my in-laws had thrown me out, blaming me for corrupting Catherine, while the real predator was living under their roof the whole time. I thought about Rachel and her children, living with a man capable of such horrible things. The next morning, I made copies of the recording. Then I sent it to everyone in the family, Sam, my in-laws, Rachel, and even Jake, He deserved to know how his name had been used. I also sent a copy to my own parents, so they would know the truth about why I was really thrown out. The aftermath was chaos. Rachel called me screaming and crying, asking if it was true. She took her kids and left Martin immediately. My mother-in-law called multiple times, but I didn't answer. My father-in-law sent me angry messages accusing me of trying to destroy their family by exposing this private matter. Private matter, as if his youngest daughter's abuse was just some minor family secret. Sam finally called after 3 days. But instead of apologizing for how he had treated me, he yelled at me for making the recording public. He said I should have come to him privately first. I laughed at that. I reminded him how he had thrown me out without even giving me a chance to defend myself. How he had believed every lie his mother told about me. How he had watched silently as his father kicked me out of my own home. He hung up on me. Catherine moved out of the house and is staying with Sarah's family. She called me crying, apologizing over and over for not speaking up when they accused me. She said she was just so scared and ashamed. I told her none of this was her fault and that she was brave to finally let the truth come out. Martin disappeared after the recording came out, packed a bag and left town. Rachel filed for divorce and is pressing charges against him. My in-laws are still trying to keep everything quiet to protect their precious reputation. They're telling everyone I manipulated Catherine into making false accusations against Martin. I've decided to file for divorce. I can't be married to someone who didn't trust me and threw me out based on false accusations. Sam keeps sending messages through mutual friends saying we should try to work things out, that he was just confused and under pressure from his family. But I don't see how we can come back from this. How can I ever trust someone who abandoned me so easily? Update 2: The situation has gotten even more complicated since my last update. After I filed for divorce, Sam's parents started a smear campaign against me in our community. They belong to a tight-knit social circle, and word spreads fast. They're telling everyone I broke up 2 marriages, mine and Rachel's. According to them, I was jealous of their perfect family and convinced Catherine to make up stories about Martin because I wanted to destroy their happiness. My own relatives started calling me, saying I should withdraw the divorce petition. Some of them suggested I apologize to my in-laws and try to fix things. My uncle even came to my apartment to tell me how my actions would affect my younger sister's marriage prospects. He said no one would want to marry into our family after what I did. I told him he should be more worried about families that protect abusers than about my divorce. Last week, everything changed. Rachel was packing up her things in the house she shared with Martin when she found his old phone in a box in their closet. She called me crying and told me to come over. When I got there, she showed me the messages between Martin and Catherine. They went back almost a year and proved everything Catherine had said. The messages were disturbing. Martin would text Catherine late at night, asking if she was alone. He would complain about Rachel, saying Catherine was more beautiful and understanding than her sister. He threatened to tell everyone Catherine was obsessed with him if she ever told anyone about them. Some messages showed he had been pressuring her to get an abortion when she told him about the pregnancy. Rachel was devastated. She shared the messages with the family's lawyer, and now Martin is facing serious legal troubles. The lawyer said there might be evidence of similar behavior with other young girls, as some messages hinted at previous incidents. But the most shocking revelation came from Catherine herself. After the messages were found, she finally told me the full story. She had once tried to tell her mother about Martin's behavior, months before she got pregnant. She went to my mother-in-law crying one day when everyone else was out of the house. She told her how Martin had been touching her inappropriately and making her uncomfortable. Instead of helping her daughter, my mother-in-law told Catherine to keep quiet. She said accusing Martin would ruin Rachel's marriage and destroy the family's reputation. She told Catherine she was probably misunderstanding Martin's fatherly affection and that she should stop trying to cause problems in the family. After that, Catherine never tried to tell anyone else except Sarah. This explained why they were so quick to blame me when Catherine got pregnant. They needed a scapegoat, someone to take the blame so they wouldn't have to face what was really happening in their perfect family. I was the easiest target, the new daughter-in-law who didn't completely fit into their traditional mold. Sam finally came to see me at my apartment yesterday. He tried to apologize, saying he should have trusted me and stood up to his parents. He admitted they had been controlling him his whole life, and he had never learned to stand up to them. He said finding out about his mother knowing about Martin and doing nothing had opened his eyes to how toxic his family was. But all I could think about was how easily he had believed the worst about me. How quickly he had thrown me out of our home. How he had checked my phone and questioned my every move based on his mother's lies. Even if he had been conditioned by his family, he was a grown man who chose to treat his wife like a criminal rather than stand by her. I told him the divorce would continue. He started crying, saying he would change, that he would cut off his parents and start fresh with me. But I realized I didn't want that anymore. The whole experience had shown me who he really was, and I deserved better than someone who would abandon me at the first sign of family pressure. The divorce proceedings are moving forward. My lawyer says the evidence of how they treated me, combined with the Martin situation, should work in my favor. I don't want anything from them except my freedom. The only person I'm still in contact with is Catherine, who needs all the support she can get right now. Update 3: A lot has happened since my last update. The divorce was finalized last week. I didn't ask for anything except my personal belongings that were still at their house. Sam tried to give me half of his savings and property as compensation, but I refused. I didn't want anything that would keep me connected to that family. Martin was arrested last month after 3 more victims came forward. One was a girl who used to babysit Rachel's kids 2 years ago. Another was a cousin's daughter who had stayed with them during summer break. The third was a girl from their church youth group. The detective handling the case called me to say that my recording of Catherine's confession encouraged these girls to speak up. At least something good came out of this mess. Rachel moved to a different city with her kids. She called me before leaving to apologize for everything. She said she felt guilty for not noticing what was happening in her own home. I told her she wasn't to blame. Martin had fooled everyone except those he hurt. She started therapy with her kids to deal with the trauma of everything that happened. She also helped Catherine find a good therapist who specializes in cases like hers. Catherine had her baby 2 weeks ago, a little girl. She decided to raise her with support from Sarah's family, who have been amazing through all of this. Sarah's parents practically adopted Catherine after everything came out. They helped her finish her senior year through homeschooling and are supporting her decision to take online college classes while raising her daughter. Catherine named her daughter Hope, saying she represents a new beginning. My former in-laws tried to contact me last week. Not because they were truly sorry, but because people in our community started avoiding them after the truth about Martin came out. Several families who had young daughters stopped visiting their house. Their social invitations dried up. People whispered about them at social gatherings. They wanted me to tell everyone that we had reconciled so they could save face. My mother-in-law sent a mutual friend to convince me to speak to them. She offered to publicly apologize for blaming me for Catherine's pregnancy. But she still insisted that I shouldn't have exposed the family matter so publicly. She said I should have handled it within the family. I refused to meet them. Some things can't be forgiven. Sam still tries to contact me sometimes. He sends emails talking about how therapy has helped him understand his toxic relationship with his parents. He says he's changed and wants another chance. Last week, he came to my office with flowers, asking to talk. I had security escort him out. I got a promotion at work and decided to move to a new city. The memories in this town were too heavy. I found a great apartment in a beautiful neighborhood, and I'm starting fresh. Some people, including my parents, think I'm running away. I see it as choosing peace over painful reminders. I keep in touch with Catherine and help her when I can. She's doing better now, focusing on her baby and her studies. She sent me a picture of Hope last week. She looks nothing like Martin, which is a blessing. I send them care packages sometimes and we video chat every weekend. But I have no contact with the rest of the family. Sometimes, usually late at night, I wonder if I did the right thing by exposing everything. But then I remember how they treated me, how they threw me out without a second thought, how they chose to protect a predator rather than face the truth. I think about the other girls who came forward after Catherine's story became known. I think about Hope, who will grow up with a mother who is brave enough to finally tell the truth. No, I don't regret anything.